James here, and today we're doing something very important as we go into winter for newly planted trees. For the first 2-3 years, sometimes even the 4th and 5th year, but primarily the 2nd and 3rd year, through the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd year, it's imperative to wrap the trees. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But this is a golden rain tree that we planted just last week, and I want to wrap this tree. Now, this bamboo stake was put on by the grower and probably very important for them at that time, but we do not need to stake this tree. We're not in a situation where we're prone to have any issues, that it needs to be staked, and if we don't remove it now, somebody's going to forget and leave it there, and the tree is going to just grow into that bamboo stake. So the bamboo stake's gone, and that gives me access to the tree here. Now, tree wrap, and it's just as the name says, it's tree wrap. And the purpose of the tree wrap is to keep the radiant heat off of this southwest side of the tree on a cold winter's day. Now, what I'm talking about is it's significantly below freezing. It's say 20 degrees out, and I do not want the radiant heat touching this trunk on this side, because what it does, research shows us that the significance between the shaded side of the tree, which is going to be in that 20-degree range because that's the ambient temperature, and the radiant heat that's on this side of the tree, and we can see right now it's the kind of effect I'm already feeling. I put my hand around this tree, and this side is significantly warmer than this side. This side can get so warm from the radiant heat on a cold day that it actually liquefies, for lack of a better way to describe that. And so when the sun disappears behind the horizon, that freezes. And when that freezes, it damages the circulatory system of the tree and dies. Not the whole tree, just that section that is frozen. And then you don't know for years. You don't know until that tree has gained in girth and that bark is not being replaced and it continues to expand. And then I get a call and somebody's wondering why on earth they have this crack along this side of the tree. Well, that's why. Because they didn't put tree wrap on in the wintertime. So you're going to put this on. We just passed Halloween. It's the 2nd of November, and this is when I'm telling people to wrap their trees. You're going to start right down at the base of the tree with the tree wrap, and this comes in a roll kind of like gauze or like the Ace bandages they used to put on us when back in middle school I played sports and somebody sprang an ankle, put that wrap on. Well, there's not any elasticity to this at all. I'm not stretching this. I'm just simply pulling it taut as I go, and wrapping it around the tree. I'm doing a little bit of an overlap here. It's not an exact science. You simply want to make sure that you're covering the tree. Now, I get asked sometimes if there's other things that you can use, and there certainly is. But what you don't want to do is use anything that's going to absorb heat against the trunk. So you can put on a loose corrugated sleeve, as long as it doesn't conduct heat, as long as it doesn't warm, because that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid any warming of that trunk in the wintertime. So I'm going to go on up here. I'm just going to keep going up, and you want to go up to the first couple scaffolding branches. Now, what type of trees do you do this on? Well, you do this on basically your deciduous trees where the trunk is exposed to the sun in the wintertime. And so up we go. What that means is that I'm not putting this on like Douglas firs and white firs and pine trees, etc. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the first couple scaffolding branches here, or where the branches kind of taper off more than anything else, just because this is where I'm going to tie it off. Okay, and then I'm going to cut this, and you know, again, nobody needs to be too fancy here. We're not creating a fine piece of clothing or anything for the tree. We're just simply wanting to. So what I've done is I've split that end piece so I can bring it around, and this is how I conclude it. I tie it off like that. You can do any number of things. Don't put tape. Don't ever put tape against the trunk of a tree. Okay. Now, if you wanted to tape and you were taping like a duct tape or a Gorilla Tape or something that you were putting around to hold that end piece in place, just don't put it against the trunk. But anyway, any way that you can just to finish that off. And so this is what we end up with. This is what we wanted. Now again, remember I said you're putting this on just shortly after Halloween. It's the 2nd of November. When am I going to take it off? Well, after the threat of frost, the really cold weather, the killing frosts have gone. So I usually suggest that can be, depending on where exactly you're located. Here in the Salt Lake Valley, what we're talking about is something towards the end of April, just shortly before Mother's Day is when you want to pull this off. Now, why don't you want to leave it on year-round? Well, the trunk needs to continue to grow and expand, and this will certainly impede that process, and it's during the summer months when that's happening. So you don't want the wrap on there, but more importantly, you don't want to have the wrap on there during the growing season because it can harbor insects and other things inside there. So this comes off during the growing season, it goes back on in the wintertime for at least the first 2 or 3 years, and as I said, depending on how your tree is developing and the type of tree you have, how light or vulnerable the bark is, you could leave it on even or be putting it back on every year for up through the 4th and 5th year. So again, I can't emphasize enough how valuable this is in the health and longevity of your tree if you can keep that circulatory intact that's on that southwest corner. You'll know it because that's where the sun is shining between 2 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a cold winter's day. So that's your tip on tree wrapping, very important for your newly planted trees. And remember, if you can't hug a tree, hug an arborist.